All right, Grant McAuley, be honest. How nervous were you when we saw Ronald Acuna get hit last night? Because I was like, oh, no, I didn't even want to look at the TV.
No, you got to hold your breath if you're a Braves fan in that moment. I'm sure Ronald Acuna Jr. probably was as well. And fortunately, as we heard last night, the X-rays were negative. And as we see the lineup today, he's back at the top of the order for the Braves. So those are a couple of good things that came out of it ultimately. But, yeah, I mean, I told the guys this on the midday show, if you're making a list of things that the Braves do not need between now and any run they make through October, going according to plan, an injury to Ronald Acuna Jr. would probably be at the top of that list.
What happened with the screaming kid last night, Grant? I mean, I know you weren't in Pittsburgh. I'm trying to watch this game. I mean, I don't know. Look, I said give him some Dippin' Dots, throw some Ritalin on top. I mean, what? The kid, it was with the earshot. I mean, it was driving me crazy. Maybe it was driving the Braves pitchers crazy.
It might have been. It's quite possible. I was not there to oversee that. But I will say this, no matter what kind of distraction or what kind of a cult following that kid generated on Twitter or social media in general, it holds no candle to the Pirates girl from the 19-inning game back at Turner Field about a decade or so ago. Right. That girl will live forever in the hearts, minds, and ears of anybody who watched that game, attended that game, or was around and has since seen a replay, because that was a show of a set of lungs, the likes of which should power a radio career for the better part of 2 or 3 decades. She was that committed to Let's Go Pirates back then, but I don't know what happened last night.
And by the way, Carl, to Grant's point, that kid in that game, it's like, imagine Dakota Fanning in War of the Worlds on an endless loop.
That's what it was.
Yeah. I mean, that bad.
Grant, let's talk about Kevin Pillar. This guy's pretty amazing, man. He had 17 plate appearances going into last night and then delivers with 2 outs in the ninth. You talk about needing everybody on the roster, and you worry if a guy hasn't seen too many at-bats, but this guy stepped in and delivered.
Yeah, he did, and I think that Kevin Pillar is a guy that, maybe the expectations weren't extremely high coming into spring training when the Braves had signed a handful of outfielders and felt like they had a pretty decent amount of depth. Pillar was kind of the last man in, but he has been the last man standing amongst all of those to kind of earn an outfield spot and some playing time. I think defensively he offers a lot. I think he's a good hitter who can grind out some at-bats, hit a home run or two for you, and maybe he'll be a guy that sees a little bit more action going forward, especially as the Braves are seeing lefty starters, because as we've talked about, when you look in the middle of the order, Marcell Ozuna and Eddie Rosario both kind of cooled off. I don't see Pillar being a DH type, but some starts in left field may not be the worst thing, especially down the stretch as you're just looking to kind of keep everybody fresh on the road to October. I think that Pillar has a role to play, and maybe a few more at-bats should be thrown his way because he came through with a big hit last night. You could tell by the post-game interview. It means a lot to him to be out there and compete. He doesn't have a lot of years left in his career. He's not playing as much as he did in the past, but every time you get an opportunity to do something the likes of what you did yesterday and tie up a ball game, be part of a game-winning rally, that's going to kind of energize you. And the Braves need all the energy they could get to win that game.
All right, Grant, they've won all 3 of Yanni Chirino's starts, but, I mean, you got to score a lot of runs. 10, 12, and 8 were needed to cover Chirino. So I know he's the definition of innings eater. Are they going to just keep rolling him out there?
In the short term, probably, at least through the rest of the weekend. I think they've got that doubleheader on Saturday, which just kind of is what it is to get through that one with the Mets. But, this was always, I think, looked upon as something you take a flyer on some guys throughout the course of the season, like we talked about yesterday, to just try to cover some innings for you. And when you get Kyle Wright back here, maybe Chirinos can slide into a shorter burst, multi-inning reliever role if they need him for that. Or, as you start to get healthier in the bullpen with Dylan Lee coming back and with Jesse Chavez around the corner, maybe this is just another roster casualty. And you just tried to see if you could get something out of them another team couldn't. But I said this last night, I put it out there on social media. I feel like this experiment has kind of run its course. If you're going to, be giving away innings at the big league level, and I know I don't make these decisions, this is just one man's opinion, but it might be shared by other people. I think Michael Soroka could have just been your starter every 5th day to try to give you that 6 innings that you're looking for out of the 5th spot in rotation. I say that because of the couple of years that we waited to see Soroka get that opportunity, and I just don't know that it's doing him a ton of good to be sitting down there getting those reps at AAA when you don't have a better answer at the big league level. You mentioned it. The Braves had to outscore their opponents 30-18 in those 3 starts by Yanni Chirinos. That's not going to happen. But I'll tell you this, if in 3 starts you give Michael Soroka 30 runs worth of support, you'll probably win those 3 games. So I'm just kind of throwing it out there. You're always looking for ways to make the club better. You are going to try things, and I think that that's what they've done here. but I do feel like there's a better way, to make a long story short.
Grant, I'm with you on this. And so my question to you would be then, what are they waiting on? What's the holdup? If you feel that way, what are they waiting on with Soroka? Is it just that they don't trust him at this point?
No, I don't think it's that. I think it's, when you had options, as a player with options that can be sent to the minor leagues, and they're trying to solve the different levels of this. I don't think Chirinos was brought in here solely as somebody that they're like, okay, we solved the fifth starter spot with Yanni Chirinos. I think what they looked at was somebody with big league starting experience who could also be used in relief to throw a couple of innings, and they were kind of in need of some help with that. Colin McHugh has not been quite as effective this year. Michael Tonkin, I think, has done a lot, but, he's been used a lot too. So I think that kind of speaks to how much deeper can you make that group with some multi-inning guys. I think that more so is what Chirinos is in for. So to go back to Soroka, the why of it all, I think it's just, some timing has been part of it, certainly. He hasn't been as sharp, I think, this year as he wanted to be to start the minor league season, has had a couple of tough outings at the big league level. We knew he wasn't going to be the guy walking back in today that he was when he got hurt in 2020, but I do feel like he has made some progress this year, and the Braves have, invested quite a little sum of money in keeping him around for 3 years because they believe in the player and the person, and I just kind of like to see all of that really come full circle with a prolonged opportunity for him to really settle in and get consistent reps and improve himself around the big league guys with the big league coaching staff to move forward and get his career back on track.
It is our man Grant McAuley talking about Yanni Chirizo. I'll stop calling him Chirizo. If he keeps winning, I guess it doesn't matter. Hey, Grant, the other thing last night is it was an old-fashioned Braves clutch comeback. When you had that sort of one hopper that kind of had Matt Olson in no man's land off third base, I thought we were dead in the water. And then to push two across, that's old school Braves 2021, isn't it?
It was. This is something the Braves have done really well just under Brian Snitker in general. They had comeback wins, as you mentioned, in the 2021 season. They had a few of those last year, but this year, they haven't quite needed as many because they flipped all of their late inning runs to the first inning. And so they've been able to build a lot of commanding leads. And I don't think that they've had quite the necessity of pulling some of these rabbits out of their hat. But you'll take one, and I think you needed one. As much as a club that has, a 30-plus games over 500 record and a double-digit lead in the division could use a win, last night was a good one for the Braves. The clutch genes, and it wasn't just, Matt Olson or Austin Riley or Ronald Acuna or Ozzie Albies that had to get the big hit. It was those guys down toward the bottom of the order. Somebody like Pilar, who was just into the game to help out, and Orlando Arcia, who just very quietly has put together a really nice season at shortstop for the Braves. He did it again with the go-ahead hit last night and had a home run to boot. So just a little bit of everything, I think, is what it's going to take for the Braves to kind of play through this lull, get some of these starting pitchers back on track, have Max Fried back on the mound in a game like tonight, and then just kind of count it down until you can get Kyle Wright back in the mix and see what you get there. It's a club in a very good place, but it's also a club that's kind of been, I think, a victim of some of its own mistakes on the base paths, in the field on occasion, and just not getting enough out of the pitching staff lately. But this offense, man, it covers up a lot, and that's a good thing. That's not a knock on anybody else. This is something that you love to have when other things aren't going well.
What's up with Schuster, Jared Schuster? What's the deal there?
I think he's just kind of on that list of guys who could help out the Braves at some point in the final couple of months if they need to. He was having a pretty rough go at AAA Gwinnett, but I believe a really good start today. I think 7 scoreless innings to help them out in AAA to win a baseball game. He's just a guy who's on a list of depth that the Braves have, but it was depth that they had kind of tried out. Wasn't necessarily as consistent as they'd like it to be. And that's what leads you outside the organization to try out, guys like Yanni Chirinos and even a 20-year-old like A.J. Smith-Shawver to just put a rocket on his back and bring him to the major leagues when he started the year at High A Rome. So I think for Schuster, it's just, looking towards the future. He's still somebody that the Braves, I think, believe in as someone who could be a back end of the rotation, maybe middle of the rotation starter at his ceiling, but he's just not there right now.
All right, so just a review, when you get to that doubleheader in New York, you may see Soroka, you may see a Winans again, perhaps?
Yeah, I think those are the two candidates. Okay. Soroka's lined up to start on Saturday for Gwinnett, and Winans Day is on Sunday in AAA.
All right, Grant. By the way, let me ask you a question before we let you go. If I would have told you before the season started that Von Grissom would be spending the entire season in Gwinnett and probably would not be helping the big club off to what is become now a record-setting season from a record standpoint, would you have bought that? Would you have believed that? Grissom, by the way, went 3 for 3 today, 2 doubles, 3 runs scored for the Stripers. It's just hard to believe going into the season that this is how it's played out. And I also think it's a testament to how well RC has played, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. Like I said, Orlando's had a great year for himself, and I think the Braves had a belief in him far beyond, I felt like he was a useful contributor to this club, but I didn't feel like they were going to hand him the keys to the starting job at shortstop. So it would depend on when you told me what the Braves were doing without Vaughn Grissom. Would it be before Dansby Swanson signed with the Cubs or after? Because I would have been surprised, either way that you slice it. But that's just kind of what Orlando's been for this club, is the exact guy they needed and the exact spot that he's playing. And then for Grissom, I think that, he's having a season at AAA that ultimately could be pretty important to him in the long term, because remember, the Braves vaulted him right up from AA. He really had not had any extended, failure at any level, and probably in baseball in his entire, amateur and professional career. And big leagues is a hard place to get to. It's a harder place to stay. And I think that ultimately what he's done in Gwinnett this year could make him a better all-around hitter for experience, and the Braves could start to find ways to maybe utilize him moving forward. So it's been very interesting to see how it's played out, especially as much time as we spent talking about Vaughn Grissom in the winter.
Great stuff. Grant, appreciate you stopping by as always. Again, Acuna back in the lineup, guys, and we'll see what we do against the Pirates tonight. Grant McAuley, appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, good stuff from him. The whole Vaughn Grissom thing, it's just like at the start of the season, right. Most people expected Vaughn Grissom to be the starter. Didn't play out that way, and he hasn't been up here a whole lot.
And then Arcia, contributing again, batting 300 with clutch, and you got him for pennies on the dollar. That's the one thing. I know you mentioned that the Braves eventually, moving forward, these contracts will go further up and up and up.
Yeah.
But I imagine so will the turnstiles keep cranking at Truist and at the Battery. Right? I
mean, that was a smart play. I think it was $7 million deal.
Right.
Total. I think I want to say for Arcia, AA locked him up.
Eventually the escalators are, just the larger, the numbers go up for guys like Riley and for Matt Olson. But still, you got guys at pennies on the dollar by today's standards.